For having lived in Westminster, how many years now? Over 21 feels even in the midst of the traffic or waking at night. Clarissa was positive, a particular hush or solemnity, an indescribable pause, a suspense, but that might be her heart affected, uh, that set by influenza before Ben strikes. There out it boomed, first a warning musical, then the hour irrevocable. The leaden circles dissolved in the air. Such fools we are, she thought, crossing Victoria Street.
Okay, so the narrator is uh, speaking all this. Okay, but uh, uh, look at the absence of any fixed uh, uh, any fixed point of view over here, you know uh, and that precisely is stream of consciousness. You can compare it with the dentist story that we read, and in the dentist story the point of views were so stable, you know uh, one character speaking and then finishing his speech, and then the other character responding to that, and then still the third character when the mayor comes up, engaging in conversation with the dentist. However, over here you cannot recognize any of the conversation which is going on between any two people. That is why there is a mixing of point of views in stream of consciousness writing. Okay, we are not going to deal with any stream of consciousness writing in this course. Later, if you take up literature courses and you read modern fiction or modern literature, you will get to read some of it. Okay, and I think that is the right time for you to understand it in more detail. Okay, the next element of fiction is symbol. What is a symbol? Symbols are objects, places, events, or characters that carry more than literal meaning and therefore point the way to the meaning of the work as a whole. So, for example, the symbol of water in a novel can mean rebirth or life. Fire as a symbol could mean destruction. Now, symbol work in association with the setting. You cannot uh, just impose a meaning on a symbol from your own. Rather, you need to consider the whole setting of the story that you are reading and then attribute a meaning to an object if you want to treat that object as a symbol. Then the symbol does not have an absolute meaning. It varies from reader to reader. But the meaning you give or assign to a symbol, you should be able to justify that with reference to the context in which that story is being read or in which that story has been written. Now, Big Ben is an example of a symbol. If we go back to this quote, students, that you can see on the screen, for having lived in Westminster, how many years now? Over 20. One feels even in the midst of the traffic or waking at night. Clarissa was positive. A particular hush or solemnity, an indescribable pause, a suspense. But that might be her heart affected, they say, said by influenza. Before Big Ben strikes. There, out it boomed, first a warning, musical, then the hour, irrevocable. The leaden circles dissolved in the air. Such fools we are, she thought, crossing Victoria Street. Now, there is, uh, now this is an interpretation of a symbol, okay? Now, the Big Ben, as you know, are you aware of Big Ben, students? Some of you, what is Big Ben? Do you want to check it online on your own and share with me what Big Ben stands for? What is Big Ben? Yeah, can you
It's
check?
the clock tower in London.
Good. Okay, a clock tower in London at Westminster. Okay, and that is the place where the narrator is situating this character Clarissa at Westminster. All right, and Big Ben is the clock tower. All right. So if you look at this page on this quote, notice these words: hush, solemnity, pause. You know, these are all words of what? They're all words of silence. Okay. Now, look at this expression: Big Ben strikes. And Big Ben is what? As you just rightly said, the clock. Okay. So, of course, the clock stands for time. So, the Big Ben, therefore, becomes a symbol of what? Of reality. Because, you know, the reality is loud. Okay. The reality which surrounds us, the physical reality, that is loud. But our spiritual self, which is inside us, the heart, you know, it is kind of quiet. It is in a state of suspense. So one can interpret this extract as giving to us a contrast between the quietness of human soul and the loudness of the reality outside. So Big Ben therefore becomes a symbol of a loud reality, a striking reality, a reality which kind of controls us all the times, and that keeps us uh, at an that keeps us busy all the time, and that keeps us engaged, and that keeps us disturbed all the time, that keeps us disturbing. Look at this phrase over here: the leaden circles dissolved in the air. So you should be able to recall the rippling, the ripple movement of water. Okay, how you drop one stone in the middle of a pond, and you know the wave goes outward. So that is disturbance. All right. So therefore, Big Ben can be studied as a symbol of uh, disturbing reality, the atrocious reality, so to say, the reality which keeps us disturbed, which keeps disturbing us. All right. Now, when I interpret the Big Ben as symbol of reality, I connect it with the setting which is given to us in the whole quote, in this whole extract. So this is what I meant by my explanation in the symbol slide, that when you attribute a meaning to a symbol, or when you explain an object as a symbol, you should explain that with reference to the context in which that symbol has been written, or that symbol has been introduced to us. All right. Let me also mention along the way that apart from other things that we have just read today and in the previous class, um, symbol is a very important and vital element which differentiates uh, fiction or literature from other kinds of text. Other kinds of text, for example, the text of history, of sociology, of psychology, or of philosophy, they usually do not have symbols like this, but literature has lot many symbols, and those symbols invoke their own meaning. So even if I don't explain Big Ben the way I have just explained it, if you imagine the scene which is being created in this quote, which is right now in front of you from Mrs. Dalloway, if you imagine the situation where Clarissa, who is an old lady and whose heart has been affected by influenza and who is weak and who is walking along the street. Its name is also Victoria Street, and she is all lost in her own thoughts and seems to be, contented with the life she has and is thinking about her inner life. And she is lost in her own thoughts. But then suddenly, boom, there is that strike of the Big Ben Tower, creating ripple, creating that disturbance. Okay. If you imagine that scene, even if you don't say it, but probably your mind will head in the same direction. That is, the time is cruel. Time intervenes into your lives over and over again. Time is a reality which you cannot run away from. It comes back to you over and over again. Okay, but if you think that way, that means you are thinking about Big Ben symbolically. It becomes a symbol, right? Uh, So it does not have an absolute meaning. The meaning that you attribute to an object, treating that object as a symbol, that meaning is not absolute. Okay, that is relative. It is relative to the context in which you are interpreting a symbol. Okay, the next and last thing about uh, a literary narrative or about a story is its theme. Theme is broadly an issue or a question that a story raises. So many of you, for example, refer to the dentist story as a story about class conflict. Class conflict is an issue. Therefore, that is a theme of the story. So when you find a theme in a story or try to find a theme in a story, basically that is where the interpretation of the story starts. That is the interpretation of the story. But remember that subject of the story is not the theme of the story. They are not the same. In that particular story about the dentist, you might say it is about a dentist. The story is about a dentist. That is its subject. That is not its theme. Theme is something deeper, the broader that story produces. The theme is the issue with which the story is dealing, the issue or the question that the story is raising. So there might be stories about war, but the theme of the story could be uh, the invaluableness of human life. Okay.
Or maybe the theme of destruction.
Yeah, or could be the destruction of planet or destruction of human life. Okay. So, but something broader, bigger than what you just see in the story itself. Okay. So when you describe the theme of a story, avoid cliches. Literature is not about cliches. Cliche like, you say that love conquers all. This is the example in the reading that I shared with you. So if you describe the theme of a story using a cliche like this, love conquers all, that is not really invoking the theme of the story. That is as if you are trying to impose a theme on the story. Okay, you should be able to draw a theme out of the story, okay, using your own vocabulary instead of using the common used phrases and cliches. Okay, you might use cliches in the public speeches that you make, but not when you are interpreting a story. Okay, use your own expression for describing the theme of a story. And finally, a theme is not a moral. Okay, uh, So greed is curse, for example, is a moral, okay, which one can draw out of the story. But theme is not that. Again, theme is once again that broader issue with which the story is dealing, okay. And all the stories do not need to have a moral to begin with. In most of the cases, stories question morality, okay. They question the morality as we understand it, okay. As you know, morality, uh, the question of morality is relative. It varies from one cultural context to other cultural context. Therefore, stories do not usually preach a theme, so to say, okay. Rather, they invoke themes and they invoke issues that we can debate and discuss about. So that is why we can also say that stories do not have a conclusion, okay. Rather, they provoke discussions, they provoke questions, right? So there is another category which is called moral stories, okay. We are not dealing with them in this course. That is something altogether different, okay. uh, I don't know what they are, but they are not literary stories, okay, or they are not literary short stories, so to say. Okay, so students, I want now, this is your homework. You have to read this story on your own, The First Day by Edward Gibbons. The story is in the reading I have shared with you in Moodle. It is on page 89. I think you can take down the page. It's 3 pages story, The First Day. Uh, please read it till Monday, and then what you have to do is, very briefly, you have to describe these elements in that story. You should be able to tell me what are the characters like in that story. Just a few characters. Mainly there are two characters, only two characters in the story, okay. You should be able to tell me what is the setting, what is the historical context, what is the point of view, uh, and then are there any symbols in the story, and what is the theme of the story. Okay, there could be one word response to this question. You should come prepared with your responses about this particular story, responses in terms of the elements of fiction that you find in this particular story.